Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Preece.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, or how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the end consumer, or how to go about finding an investor if you're ready for that aspect. Bottom line is we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to establishing and growing your brand. Tracy and I have been doing this a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we've done a few good things, so we're here to help you. Please follow our podcast on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a review, and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. Tracy?
Bruce and I have been involved in consumer packaged goods commercial operations roles for over 30 years. We define commercial operation functions relating to sales, marketing, trade marketing, broker and distributor management, agency selection and management, new product development, brand acquisition and divestitures, and customer management. We also invite on our episodes friends and former colleagues from all aspects of the Road to Retail process to come on the show and offer their opinions and experience. Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify channel at Road, 2 Retail.
So Bruce, tell us about our newest sponsor.
Glad to, Tracy. Tired of getting crushed by chargebacks each time your brand sells product? From dealing with hundreds of forms that all look different to fighting tooth and nail to get repays, managing deductions is tough work. And you're almost certainly leaving money on the table. Fortunately, there's a solution. Floret was built to help brands like yours. With Floret's software platform, you can automate your deductions workflow, get insight into your trade spend, and even have your deductions disputed for you. Whether you're a scrappy young brand trying to break into retail or an established supplier looking to get sharper on trade, Floret will put money back in your pocket. We've saved brands hundreds of thousands of dollars this year alone. Visit www.tryfloret.com to book a demo and learn more. That's www.tryfloret.com.
Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify channel at Road, 2 Retail.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail. Welcome, Bruce, and tell us a little bit about who we have today on our show.
Tracy, good morning. We have a great guest today, friend of the show, Gaylord VanGuilder. Gaylord is co-founder of the Goodsprout company, a very interesting science-based skincare company, and their initial brand is called Buddle. And Gaylord's going to tell us all about that. But Gaylord, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Yeah, doing well, Bruce and Tracy. Thanks for having me. Before we hop in, I got to say today's a great day. I got a 10-year-old that started 5th grade. I've got a 12-year-old that started middle school, and I've got a 14-year-old that started high school as a freshman today. And it happens to be my wife and I's 20th wedding anniversary today. And
wow, big day.
I get to speak to you guys.
Well, I don't know how it gets any better than, being on the road to retail with all of that. I think I would have dropped out of school if I had to start in early August. But that was the third time I started 5th grade. Anyway, Gaylord, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, because it's quite interesting, and what led you to, and your co-founders, to think you had an opening here in Buddle in baby care.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I hop in, I just want to say thanks to you guys. The content that you guys put out, obviously I've been a consumer of. I find it very valuable as a founder, as an operator, just as a business person. to kind of consume that educational piece of it, whether it's on the retail side or the go-to-market strategy or whatever it is, has been extremely useful for me. And the other side of that is really the network that is created there. I know there's been multiple times where I've reached out to Tracy or Bruce and said, hey, I listened to XYZ podcast. Can you connect us? And, so there's a community that forms around that, which I think is valuable as well. So just really want to say thanks, for what you guys do.
Well, we appreciate that very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the audience, I'm Gaylord VanGuilder. Professionally, I've been blessed over the years to be a part of teams that have, helped and build and exit a few different companies now, primarily on the pharma and CPG side. The last company we built and sold was a dermatology focused company where I oversaw the brand RX, generic RX, and consumer health business units. That was also where I really cut my teeth on CPG marketing with a fairly well-known sunscreen, which, by the way, is an amazing sunscreen. Our family still uses it, and I still recommend it, and I recommend it to your audience. Blue Lizard Australian sunscreen's a great product to keep you protected, and they're doing phenomenal things with the company. But along that journey, we really kind of noticed a gap in the market where there was a lot of attention and focus on adult skincare. And we saw that there was an opportunity to tap into children's skincare where there wasn't a lot of innovation and research being done. And I think there's a number of reasons, for that. Obviously, there's a lot of research and work being done on the prescription side. But on the CPG side, a lot of these companies have both, baby, children's skincare as well as adult. And when you think about, where do you put that dollar as a company? Do you put it in the larger adult market? Do you put it in the smaller pediatric market? A lot of the times the choice is made to go with the larger adult market. And so that really created a gap for us to come in and really focus on creating innovation, doing research and development to advance baby and children's skincare. The other side of that is my wife, who's a co-founder in the company, was watching our grandkids one day, and she was using the same. My daughter had brought over the diaper bag and all the goodies that you need to take care of the kiddos, and I noticed, or she had noticed that she was using the same diaper cream that we had used for our daughter, which was likely the same diaper cream that our parents were using on us. And so that kind of lit a fire. There's been so much innovation in and around the baby category. I mean, just take car seats, for example, right? Bruce or Tracy, I mean, could you imagine using the car seat today that your parents used with you, if they even used one?
I don't think they used one. They just strapped me in the back.
Absolutely. Yeah. The old station wagon where the seat faced backwards and it made you deathly sick. But yeah, so that really highlighted a gap in the market for us that, hey, there's an opportunity here for a company to come in. And that really led to the formation of the Goodsprout company, where, our lofty aspiration is to change the way the world sees and understands baby and children's skin. And, to do that, we've surrounded the company with a lot of, great expertise to help kind of guide our, what products are we developing? How are we developing them? If you look at our scientific advisory board, we have two, phenomenal pediatric dermatologists who are well known and well regarded in the specialty of dermatology. We also have a lady that headed up the microbiome platform for Johnson & Johnson for a number of years. And so, they help kind of guide the company on that R&D product development side quite a bit. But outside of that, quality, regulatory, it's not lost on us at all that we are creating products for the most precious gift in anybody's life. And so when you look at things like quality and safety, I mean, those are paramount to our company. And so we've surrounded the company with folks that can help guide and lead those efforts and initiatives and clinical trials and studies to, show, safety, tolerability, efficacy, all that good stuff. So yeah, that's what got us here.
That's a great backstory. And what really impressed me most, Gaylord, about what you said is that you surrounded yourself, with a good team that's got a great background. So a little bit, let's dive in a little bit more. So what kind, love the backstory. You saw the gap in the market. What kind of research, maybe dive a little bit more deeper into I know you did, but what types of research did you do when you were, developing Buddle?
Yeah, absolutely. So the brand didn't start off as Buddle. So we had a concept and we had a name that you could tell primarily came from guys. So we went and did some qualitative market research, ran an ATU study across 400 moms. And what we found is, there is a real opportunity in the market. Specifically with the name that we had come up with. They loved the name. There was a little bit of humor in the name, but they didn't connect it to quality. They didn't connect it to a premium type brand. And their recommendation was to go back to the drawing board on the name. And, I really can't stress the importance of, doing market research prior to birthing a new brand, if you would, because it was highly instrumental in us really crafting what we ended up going to market with. The learnings that, we gained in that ATU around the attitudes of the market, where the opportunities were, where the market is already satisfied, really helped guide how we position the brand as we approached launch. That was kind of our big ticket spend as it relates to market research. We're huge believers in test research, consumer voice, all of that good stuff. And there's actually software and tools out there that are relatively inexpensive that you can use to test things like, imagery, messaging, pricing, those types of elements that you really need to have dialed in, prior to going to market. And so we leverage some of those more cost-effective tools to tap into our audience, to have them tell us, how things should look and feel. So,
hey, Gaylord, excuse me. For the group out there, can you just explain and define the acronym ATU?
Yeah, so the ATU is the attitude trial usage study that when you really want to dive in and understand a market, where's the white space, what areas are really kind of overly satisfied. It's a great way to take a cross section of a market and really gain some valuable insights. And yeah, we used a group out of Chicago to run that. We across 400 moms. We segmented that into a certain group that was brand new moms versus existing moms. And so it really, I would highly recommend anybody that's going to market, they, do a ATU study to understand the white space.
So one other question here. As a guy who used to work on Boudreaux's butt paste, I am curious about the name you guys walked away from, if you're willing to share.
I am. It's near and dear to my heart. It's Lil Stinker's Butt Putty.
I did not know that.
And everybody gets a good laugh out of it, and that's what we found in the market research. Is people really did like the name. It was endearing. It was fun. All that good stuff. But they just simply didn't connect it to quality, which is highly important.
Right.
And they didn't connect it to premium either. And that's kind of the positioning that we were going after. So we had to pivot, and Buddle Skincare was born.
I love it.
That's great, because Tracy and I talked to lots of founders, Gaylord, and it'll probably come up a little later, about, trying to be true to the initial plan that, you kind of craft in your office or at the dining room table? But then of course stuff happens. And do you try to force your plan, or do you adapt, right?
Yeah.
So let's go down this path a little bit. So again, as a smaller firm, you guys have shown great discipline in embracing testing and learning and surrounding yourself with people with this very specific skill set. Because as you're talking about, people may cut corners on themselves, but generally not their kids, and especially not infants. So the fact that you have all this data is going to be helpful. But talk to us just a little bit more in a category such as, diaper rash, baby skincare, however you want to specifically define it. It's not like there's no products out there. So can you just talk a little bit more about how you and your team are driving and explaining differentiation to both the rookie moms that are having their first child and the veteran moms that might have had, a baby before? What's that meaningful point of difference that you have to be able to explain in simple English?
Yeah, absolutely. So the market today and historically has really been focused on treatment. And, the understanding of the skin and baby skin, that it's maturing over the first 12 to 18 months of life, along with kind of our understanding of the microbiome, really led us to a philosophy around optimizing the health of baby's skin, and specifically the skin around baby's bottom. I never thought I would be a expert in baby bottoms, but here we are. And so, Bruce, it's really, a shift in paradigm, which leads to a fair amount of education around, optimizing the health of baby's bottom, because the most protective skin is a healthy skin, right? And not just focusing on the treatment. And so our goal kind of going into this was to, minimize the severity of the flares when they do happen, and then extend the amount of time between the flares. Because there's only so much that a product or a system of products can do as it relates to prevention and treatment. When you look at diaper rash and why things are caused, it's multifactorial, right? You've got dietary things that can be changing. You have medicinal things that can be changing. You can have a child that's sitting in that spring break trip for 8 hours in a car seat in a wet diaper, which is really an occluded environment. And there's elements that are unique to that environment itself, as it relates to pH and the microbiome. It's really quite a fascinating area where your gut microbiome is interacting with your skin microbiome. And there's only 2 times in our lives where that truly happens. One is when we're in diapers as a child, and one is when we're in diapers as adults, later in life. And so it's quite a fascinating area, oddly enough, that we decided to take a deep dive into. And so, really focusing in on prevention was key for us. And that really led to the development of a system-based approach that is targeted towards the treatment, but more importantly, the prevention of diaper dermatitis or diaper rash. And so that's what, we developed in collaboration with the Scientific Advisory Board. So what do you do, once you develop something like this? How do you prove the concept works? So we commissioned a clinical trial where we enrolled 40 diaper-aged children who all presented with mild to moderate diaper dermatitis, and ran a study with a lady out of High Point, North Carolina, who's well regarded in kind of the R&D circles, and saw phenomenal results. The clinical results, the safety, the efficacy, all of that was just phenomenal. We had no incidents of reoccurrence of diaper rash during the duration of the study, which was a 4-week study. And so we felt, really good about, hey, the system concept that has been developed is actually working in practice. And that's what gave us the confidence to launch in the marketplace.
Awesome. I love it. So let's talk about the launch a little bit. So tell us a little bit about your launch strategy, online, retail, and how you came up with those strategies, and just share with our audience a little bit, because the brands we talk to, they struggle a little bit about, okay, do I do online only? Do I do online and retail? Do I just do retail? So tell us a little bit about the strategy for Buddle and how you came to those conclusions and decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. So our strategy is to be exclusive to e-commerce for the here and now. And the goal of that is to really build community around the brand with moms. And we feel like we can build the brand to a certain point, exclusive to e-commerce, and then make a bridge to brick and mortar at a later date. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to build community. It allows us to prove that we have brand traction in the marketplace, so that when we do, set up that meeting with the target buyer or whoever it may be, we've got good data that we can come in and talk about. And so that's the overarching strategy. We launched, and hopefully your listeners will enjoy this, but we launched January 17th on our own website as well as Amazon. And within 2 weeks of launch, we found out that we had a leakage issue with our foaming pump. And so, we had to pull back all of the inventory that, had that SKU in it from Amazon. Work with our packaging partner, who has been great to really work through the root cause and then rework the inventory. And, we came back to market. So that kind of forced us into a soft launch type of position. Came back to market mid-March. And then we forced about 6 months of A/B testing into the month of April. So, really May, June timeframe was really when we had things clicking, and yeah, we've seen phenomenal traction since then. But I share that just to say that anything that's going to go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not a easy road sometimes.
Thanks for sharing that, because that's great for our audience to hear, because things don't always go according to plan, right, Bruce?
Yeah, we were speaking right up front about the need to be flexible, because you'd be foolish to try something like the Goodsprout company without a plan. I would put forward you'd be equally foolish to think that plan is going to be executed with no deviations at all.
Right.
Whether it's a leaker, it always comes back to the Tyson quote: "Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face."
Exactly.
Then the plan changes. So Gaylord, you touched on this, and if you don't mind, let's just go a tiny bit deeper. When you and your team decide that you guys are ready to try brick and mortar, what criteria will you be looking at in terms of what retailers you might look at, and then how would you handle that? Because Tracy and I run into lots of founders, and it doesn't mean that none of them can do it, because it all depends on your background, that try to go it alone, right? I'm going to do everything. Or what criteria would you look at for like a sales agent or a partner, different types of expertise with an account. But, one of the bumper stickers is we run into founders that want to do everything themselves. And it's kind of like, so you guys would prefer to fail for free than pay some money to have someone help you with fill in the blank, selling, distribution, et cetera, that knows exactly what they're doing. Because as you just alluded, if you guys had that leaking problem and had gone to traditional brick and mortar retail, that could have been fatal.
Absolutely. No doubt. Yeah. Look, I think one of the things to know about us is, we don't feel like we're the smartest people in the room. And we feel like surrounding ourselves with people that have a high level of expertise in a specific area is extremely valuable and makes us more powerful as a team. And so as you look at, making the bridge from retail or making the bridge from e-commerce to brick and mortar, the things that we look at around who is understanding our consumer and where our consumer is showing up in brick and mortar. So, if you just, for example, if you look at, our brand, I think, Target would be a phenomenal fit as that first kind of step into brick and mortar. I don't have the recent data, but it's a very high percentage of first-time moms that shop at Target. And that's really their sweet spot. And so I think for us as a brand, that makes sense. We are in the process of getting target.com set up right now. And so opening up those lines of communication. And I've been very clear with them to say, hey, we would love to be able to bridge when we do bridge with Target. So those are some of the discussions that are happening now. When we built and scaled Blue Lizard, we used a number of broker networks to help do that. And I think that goes back to the point, Bruce, of, hey, bring in the expertise. Yeah, I can tell you, because everybody balks and they said, oh, I don't want to give up 5%. Well, that 5% or whatever it is that you negotiate that you're giving up by bringing kind of brokers to the table, you're also getting their expertise, the relationships they have within whoever the retailer is, the expertise in working with that retailer. And then I don't want to discount at all the operational components that go along with that. The retail brick and mortar game, it's not overly difficult to get on the shelf, right? So if we wanted to get onto the shelf, we could, pull the right people together and we could do that. The magic is turns off the shelf, right? And how are we going to drive that, product out the door and drive scans in a way that's going to allow us to thrive and not create a liability for the company.
So just a couple of things to summarize there. And Gaylord, right there, you just showed that this is not your first rodeo. So to the folks listening out there, not only does a broker, sales agent, however they choose to refer to themselves, not only do they have the relationships inside the account, because they're probably representing numerous other brands, they're in there all the time. If you're a really small brand and you're fortunate enough to get into a retailer, you might get one meeting a year, maybe. And it's going to be short because you're small. These people are in the building all the time. They can sense things, like they smell smoke. They know something's coming, whether it's a strategy change, there's going to be turnover in personnel in the buying group, et cetera. They're aware of that. And then the other things that people don't pay enough credit to, and Tracy and I learned this when we interviewed about 12 buyers from large retailers. They said, look, we've accepted lots of brands over the years that never make it to shelf because they can't get set up. They can't fill out the new item paperwork. They can't navigate the portal. They screw up setting up their promotional schedule. So, and then you get into things like chargebacks or disputes. That right there is probably worth 105%. Talk about a headache, is burning time, chasing down disputes. Yeesh.
Yeah, absolutely. To add to that, Bruce, I do think, just for the benefit of the audience, if you're using brokers to go down that pathway, be with them shoulder to shoulder. Okay. It's not hey, I'm going to toss you the football and go run with it. It's a situation where, hey, we're working together. We're both going to show up to the meetings. We're both going to communicate with the buyers, and I'm going to leverage kind of your expertise and skill set to help land us in a good spot. The back end, like, I'll take Walmart, for example, the shipping aspect of what you have to hit as far as KPIs with them can equate, if you don't hit those KPIs, can equate to real fees. And so, having that operational knowledge, through the broker is critical. But as you're going through and navigating, the meetings with the buyers and getting set up and all that good stuff, it's a 1+1. It's not a, hey, I'm going to send the broker out to do my business and catch fish and bring them home.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And before we kick this over to Tracy, consumer packaged goods, commercial operations is not a spectator sport. If you don't want to get your hands dirty, if you're not willing to be in the trenches with your broker, you're actually not doing business. That's called prayer.
Yes.
You're hoping things work. Tracy?
Yeah. Hope is not a strategy. Yeah, great insight, Gaylord. And I'll just want to add here, when you talked about side by side, it's really about collaboration with your sales agent and partnering with them. So let's talk about marketing a little bit. So tell us a little bit about the levers you're using right now to build a brand awareness for Buddle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got to give a little bit of a shameless plug here. We have partnered with an advertising agency that has really been the creative genius and driving force behind the Buddle skincare brand. Agency Habitat, based out of Fort Worth, Texas, has really come alongside us as a true marketing partner. The beautiful thing about it is, going back to the early days where we were doing the market testing, and it was really that group that came up with the Buddle skincare name. They, on the team, I mean, they've got a phenomenal team of folks and marketers that have been there, done that. But there also happen to be a lot of new moms. And so you get a situation where, Buddle truly was created by moms, for moms, through the efforts of Agency Habitat. But if you look back at branding, positioning, messaging, go-to-market strategy, Agency Habitat really drove all of that. And then you get into the executional piece of, hey, let's get our store set up. Let's get our Amazon set up. Let's get Meta rocking and rolling. Let's get our media, our programmatic. So when we look at marketing as a whole, we work together with Agency Habitat to, and also one of the primary benefits of working with somebody like an Agency Habitat, which is really unique to them, is they have their own in-house production studio. And when I say in-house production studio, they're involved in film, TV, social content creation. And so what it allows for us is a true competitive advantage where we can crank out, content, UGC in very short order. And you've got the marketing team that's working cohesively with the production team all under one roof. And it makes for a synergy that is just truly impactful. So
that's awesome.
I would encourage your listeners to reach out to them and have a discussion, because it's just, I think you'll be amazed just like we are. But as we look at marketing for an emerging brand, specifically for baby, you've got to build the bridge of trust, right? This is the most precious gift in mom's life. And so the first step is to really build that bridge of trust. And so we lean heavily into social, into media, into programmatic media, to really create awareness and to start that educational process. Because we're coming up with we've developed a new approach for the treatment and, more importantly, prevention of diaper rash. A lot of our early marketing has really skewed educational, because we want to be, as a brand, as Buddle, we want to be the educational resource for mom. And so, a lot of our blogs and that type of stuff is really going to skew educational. But from an execution perspective, it's a lot of social. We just recently kicked off our influencer program. and have brought in a phenomenal lady who had built basically the influencer program for a coffee creamer that exited in January. And it's really a interesting dynamic. When we were building Blue Lizard, the influencers, they weren't called influencers. It was mommy bloggers and vloggers. And just in that short amount of time, the whole kind of concept of influencer and affiliate and brand ambassador has really taken root. And so we've just in July just kicked off that program and are excited about kind of where
That's
we're
awesome.
going.
Great. Love that strategy. Bruce?
So Gaylord, just a little bit further on communication and clarity, because you guys have been very disciplined in research and understanding the attributes and benefits and ingredients and the whole kind of new mom psychology of, being very careful with your infant. What other, you've talked about all the techniques you're using. What are you using in your team and your agency to evaluate success of these metrics? Because lots of things we all want them to, but if we go out and do something, a lot of times you don't see the return overnight. So do you guys, we look at ROI on a program, but we don't really have a heart attack until we have 3 months of data in? I mean, what are you doing? Because whether you're P&G or the Goodsprout company, money is and should be precious and carefully monitored as to how it's being applied and that impact. So what are the metrics and tools you're using?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think kind of to take a step back to lead into that question, we have an emerging brand, right? So the cost of customer acquisition is extremely high right now.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think collectively as a team, which includes our investment community, we lean into that, right? And so when you look at things like ROAS, for example, your return on ad spend, it's not going to be blowing the socks off of anything in these early days, right? So what are the metrics that we do look at? Well, we look at revenue, right? We look at orders. We look at average order value. We look at social growth. Are we growing the community? And so I think there's just a general recognition, in these early days for an emerging brand that, we're not going to be completely optimized, from some of your normal kind of marketing KPIs that you would look at. That we are going to pay a higher cost of acquisition for our customers early on. And we're seeing that play out in the data. And every month, things get a little bit better. Search gets a little bit more efficient.
I'm sorry, Gaylord, how often are you and your team tweaking things? Because it's a fine line between we need to let this thing cook for a little while. And another thing is, especially since you've had success at other stops in your career, it's like, I've seen enough. We need to course correct.
Great question.
Well, it's interesting. I'm learning as we go. I am not an e-commerce expert. I'm quickly becoming highly educated in that space. But I've surrounded myself with people who do know. And so what's interesting is when you shift campaigns, let's say in Meta, it's not a smooth shift. So if you have one ad that's performing and you switch to another ad, there's a time where the algorithm is going to go back into learning mode, and you're not going to be optimized for that new campaign immediately. Another example is, let's say Amazon, right? So if you want to go in and you want to change your listing, you want to change something in your listing, you want to, tweak the title, you want to tweak your description or your bullet points, there's going to be a period of time where that kind of dampens the, search of your listing. And so, there's real impacts to making tweaks. And so when we do make tweaks, we want to make sure that we're making the right tweaks and that they're based on, hey, we're seeing this kind of behavior out of this type of ad. And so we want to try to duplicate that or lean into it. But we want to make darn sure that, when we do it, it's a worthwhile change, because we are going to have a little bit of depression before it kicks back in.
So before we kick this to Tracy, I want to kind of make a comment and commend you and your team. We meet with lots of small brands. We talk with lots of investors, and they don't seem to realize, especially if they're coming from big established brands, or that's what they've invested in, going down to truly de novo startups or an emerging brand like you, their heads, and I'm guilty of this from time to time too, I'll admit it. You default to the metrics you've seen throughout your whole career.
Sure. Yeah.
But Buddle does, people are still learning who it is. So to expect the same efficiency that like Tylenol or Tide gets would be foolish, because those have decades of awareness. They have, decades of, mothers, fathers passing it on to sons and daughters. But I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in where people are like, XYZ emerging brand, well, our Amazon ROAS is terrible compared to what I've seen in the past. How many emerging brands have you ever worked on before? None. Okay, so your frame of reference is really a white space.
Absolutely.
So,
well, and to add to that, Bruce, you and I and Tracy have all probably are guilty of this, but throughout my professional career, I've always looked towards my elders, right? The folks that have been there and done that for experience. And usually that translates to an older person. In this world of e-commerce, that's not necessarily the case. And so, we may be leaning on somebody that's in their 20s that historically, probably wouldn't have had a seat, at the table, or, their ideas would have been poo-poo because they're too young. But these folks are the experts now, right? So when we go to learn about how to get on TikTok and how to optimize the storefront there, those are a lot of the times they're in their 20s and in their 30s, and they're absolutely brilliant about how to get you set up and rocking and rolling. And you just got to lean into that. It's an adaptation that I feel like we have to make as a company and have made.
Great point. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about fundraising. So tell us, our audience, a little bit about where you are in the process, and also what you are looking for. If you are, what are you looking for in an investor?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've raised and closed a seed round early on. We have an open round for a preferred A, and primarily have been able to fund the company with friends and family and former colleagues and that type of stuff that have seen kind of what we can do as a team. And we do have an open round, like I said. So if any of your audience would like to have a discussion, more than happy to take a deeper dive into the company in all seriousness. But really what we look for as for in a investor is somebody. Look, the money is one thing, right? But what you get with the money is equally as important. And so we look for investors that can be accretive in a number of ways, right? So the capital is one avenue. Their expertise and what they've done in the past is another avenue. Their network is another thing that we look at. Like, absolutely. So from a business development perspective, are they aligned with strategic partners that we may want to partner with in the future? Are they aligned with larger kind of strategic capital partners? Influencers, large influencers. So we look at the kind of the total value that the investor is bringing to the table, and ideally, that's the kind of investor that we want around the table, is somebody that can help not only with the capital resources, which are highly important, but who can kind of come in and provide other value.
So let's take a small twist on Tracy's question, Gaylord. what are some things that you would counsel not only your own team, like Bruce calls up and he's willing to invest money. Let's say, what are the things you watch out for? Because on the one hand, as an emerging brand, it's like, man, I need cash. But what are the things that a potential investor might say or have done in the past where you're like, I just don't need it. Don't need it that bad.
Yeah, I mean, if they have a history of taking out people's knees, we probably want to
Yeah.
steer away from
Okay.
that.
Right. Good point.
But yeah, in all seriousness, you really want somebody that has at least an appreciation or an understanding of emerging brands, ideally e-commerce, because there's certain challenges in getting a brand off the ground. I think, Bruce, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you've got an investor that, their background has been, large brand, large CPG. When they look at metrics of an emerging brand, it might not be a good fit, right? Because there's going to be a period of pain that we're going to go through as we build this brand. And so, having that appreciation and understanding, which we do today around the table, is critical. I understand that capital is important. I always say that money's not everything, but I rank it right up there with oxygen. You kind of need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but having the wrong capital in can absolutely steal your oxygen.
Yeah, no doubt.
So Gaylord, one other thing on this, when you get a phone call or have a lead on a potential investor, Tracy and I've spoken with both founders and investors, and everyone kind of has their own style. We've had both founders and investors that say, the first time I make contact with Gaylord, I just want to talk to him. I want to make sure he's not a lunatic. I want to learn about his background, talk a little bit high level. And we've had other people are like, just send me the model. I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't really care if you and I want to go on vacation together. Send me your numbers. So if, again, let's say Tracy and I are calling you to invest, what do you want to do? Do you just want to have like breakfast and talk? Or are you a guy who wants to immediately put the deck on the table and talk about years 15 EBITDA?
Well, we can do it both ways. The preference, no doubt, would be to start with relationship building. What I've learned, Bruce, and this is the first time that I've raised capital, for my own venture. In other lives, I've helped, raise growth capital and that type of stuff. But what I've learned is they're investing in you, right? They're investing in me. They're investing in people. The business plan, it needs to be able to wash its face, and it needs to be able to make sense, and there needs to be some forward-looking opportunity that is plausible. But at the end of the day, is this a team that can execute on that business plan? And I think that you can only assess that through spending time together.
Yeah, absolutely. About relationship.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
And it's a tough one too, because we've also had other founders talk about, especially when they're raising money for the first time, it's like, man, I took money from this group and they call me like every Tuesday. And, I'm somewhat obligated to talk to them because and all these people say is I put that in this little pile over here of things I need to watch out for the next time. Because, if Gaylord's talking to Bruce and Tracy all the time about how things are doing, Gaylord's not working.
Yeah.
Right. And you're not Procter & Gamble with 14 people in the investor relations department that they get paid to do that.
No, not at
Tracy,
all.
anything else on money, Tracy, before we move on?
No, I think that's good.
So Gaylord, kind of a fun little question, which is always interesting. Who's had the greatest influence on your professional career, and what did this person or organization do that, over the years you're just really grateful for? That's like, man, that man or woman took a bet when I didn't know up from down.
That's a tough one. There's been so many people as a part of my professional and personal journey that have been instrumental. I think my dad, going back to him, and my dad was a retired Army guy, a quality guy that really taught me the value of hard work, and knowing the details. I point to my uncle, who's been a very successful entrepreneur. I kind of grew up watching him, fight the battles and have some success. And so I think from a business perspective, he's somebody that I lean on quite a bit to run things by. There's a guy by the name of Dr. Cameron Durant, who's probably one of the best leaders I've ever had the pleasure to work for. This guy just understands, how to connect and communicate with people and inspire teams. And I think if you asked anybody that has worked or, worked with him or around him, that they would feel the same. And then, I had the opportunity to consult with a company by the name of Prasco, and can't say enough about Chris Arrington and the Arrington family. We're a family of faith, and what they've built with Prasco in building a company that is really built on faith and living that out is really unique in today's society. And to see how they do it successfully, I was able to kind of take bits and pieces of that and really admire, what they do. I could go on, but those are, when I got hit with the question, I think those are really the four that I would point to.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. All right. So Gaylord, if people wanted to, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? We've had a few guests shock Tracy and me and give out their mobile phone numbers. Now, most of them were in the BD space, but you're in the fundraising space. What if Uncle Warren Buffett's watching and wants to send you some money?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'll start with my address. No, I'm just kidding. LinkedIn is probably the best way. My email address is VanGuilder. That's VanGuilder at good-sprout.com. That may get butchered. So if that doesn't work, I think LinkedIn it would probably be the easiest path.
Love it.
That's great. That's great. Tracy, the big finish.
Absolutely. First of all, Gaylord, great time spending with you. Lots of great insight. Love it. I know our small emerging brand audience is going to love this episode. But thanks again for joining us today. Please continue to follow us on our Spotify and iTunes channel, Road 2 Retail, and also on our LinkedIn page. So thank you again, Gaylord. We really appreciate your time today. And thanks for joining us.
Good luck out there, folks.